All right, then welcome back. Let's get into this market picture then very quickly and just get a sense of where things are going and what exactly is moving the market picture. We saw a fairly mixed board for Asia to start things off. The Nikkei managing to go higher, though only 0.4%, nearly 0.5% better off there. But the rest of that Asian trading picture losing more than 1% each across the board there as things progress right now. The FTSE 100 is also a big loser today, the biggest out in those major European markets. More than 0.5% loss for the DAX and the CAC 40 as well in this lunchtime trading picture. So as you can tell, negativity to start off this trading week. We are seeing things perhaps progress a little bit into the negative front to close out the month of February. Onto the local bourse then, you're seeing red, but it is only just 0.05% down is the JSE All Share. Whether it'll stay with that mark perhaps is going to be difficult to tell, considering that the rest of the market is going higher outside of the industrials, which are 1.33% weaker today, and that would have come through then from the likes of Naspers and Process, of course having some sort of impact from the Asian trading picture a little earlier on this morning. Financials are down and they've taken their cue, or rather they're up 0.5%, taking a little bit of their cue from the banking counters, which is up over a tenth of a percent. Platinum and gold miners enjoying a really good day, which has meant that the resources are up 1.33%, so a positive trading picture for those shares on that front, while the South African listed property segment nearly 2% better off. Also a very big gainer there. In terms of companies that have gone up so far, the likes of Bytes as well as Transaction Capital going up there 7.3%. Going down though, the likes of Curo have certainly suffered of late and now 4% weaker as well in this lunchtime trading picture. Onto the commodity front then as well, we're seeing Brent crude oil go up 0.8%. It's at $63.42 a barrel. Is demand beginning to come back into the market though, considering as well that Texas has perhaps begun to relook to open up again, considering the cold weather that was out in that part of the world? What does that actually mean for Brent crude oil? We'll see over the next few days what happens to that share price. And a bit of mixed fortunes then for platinum and gold, both heading in opposite directions there. The platinum price, $1,269 an ounce, $1,796 an ounce then for gold. Onto the currency, weakness unfortunately, and major weakness at that as we head towards budget. 1.3% weaker is the local currency, 14 Rand 84, 18 Rand. We're back above that mark against the euro, and 20 Rand 83 then for a British pound. Let's have a chat then to Viv Govender then from Rand Swiss as we unpack this market picture a little bit more than for us. Viv, thank you so much for the time, really appreciate it. Perhaps let's start off where I ended then, just with regards to the currency there weakening today. Would you say that that is a bit of nervousness ahead of the budget?
Partially, but also I do think, a bit more of a consolidation is happening in the market. The rand has strengthened quite significantly over the last little while. As we've seen our market strengthen, as the markets pull back a bit, the currency will weaken just because of a bit of uncertainty, not just in South Africa, but in the world as general.
What happens though, in terms of expectations, if we don't get what we really desire? I mean, the rest of the world is perhaps looking at us to rein in debt and perhaps look to how we can get more money into the fiscus as well. If we aren't able to do that, does that mark perhaps get worse and worse from here? Do we go back above 15 Rand and sort of sustainably stay there? Because confidence gets weakened from here, doesn't it?
I wouldn't know for certain it's just about the budget, but I mean the trend has been for the last little while for a weaker currency. Our fiscal situation has weakened significantly over the last few years. Our growth rate has disappointed multiple years in a row, and I don't think that unless we get a situation in which we can boost growth in the country by whatever means, by some structural reforms, by government stimulus, whatever it may be, we need growth in the country. That's the most important factor in order to get the rand stronger.
That certainly is very true. It's a hard line then that the finance minister Tito Mboweni sort of has to draw into here. Are there any big expectations on your part from his speech? I mean, something that you perhaps want him to really focus on, zone in on, and ensure that it gets done?
Yeah, look, I mean, the government has been, more focused on dividing an ever-shrinking pie. I think the government's focus needs to go towards, for instance, increasing the size of the pie. So I've seen some really disappointing things. For instance, there's talk about NSFAS having to cut back on certain kind of funding, especially things like engineering and education and nursing. I think actually, degrees and qualifications that are what's necessary for the country to grow, better into the future. So I think if we can focus on growing the pie by whatever means, creating a more, suitable kind of environment for business to take place, I think that's the most important thing. Unfortunately, I don't expect that to happen.
Yeah, because unfortunately things have never happened the way we'd like them to at budget, have they? Okay, let's get into some equity news, particularly on the local front. You had Anglo Platinum coming out with a set of earnings as well on that front. The PGM space has done very well of late, hasn't it?
Yeah, look, I mean, just because they've been doing so badly for a piece of time, the recovery we've seen has looked very attractive. I mean, at one point in time, you know, all the jokes about the fact that platinum cards used to be more valuable than the gold cards, but there was a while back last year where platinum was basically almost half the price of gold. So that's obviously a situation in which, was a very big, drop in the platinum price. We've seen it recover, but now it's still significantly lower than the price of gold by $600 or so. But that recovery has really helped the platinum producers. And South Africa being the number one platinum producer in the world has obviously benefit from that. Unfortunately, I do think that, it's still a market that's very, very dependent on what's happening in terms of global demand, in terms of, what's happening in the global economy. And, if we do see another downturn in, for instance, in things like car production or another resurgence in the virus or whatnot, again, these factors will be, negatively affecting these companies.
Yeah. They also went through a very firm restructuring, and I mean that was the previous CEO's doing, Chris Griffith. I mean, he went through a real intent effort on ensuring that they brought their costs down. Operationally, they feel like they're a whole lot better. Is there any more sort of fat to cut off really from the business, or is this really its most optimal considering how much it's had to do so far?
It all depends. I mean, the thing with cutting fat off, if the fat is going to be sold for a higher value, you shouldn't have cut the fat off in the first place. And when it comes to these platinum miners, and all the miners, for instance, they're very dependent on what happens to the price of their commodity. If the price of the commodity goes up to 2,000, they shouldn't have cut any fat. They should have actually added a bit more fat onto the system, because that fat could have been sold at a profit. We've seen situations, for instance, with the Sasol recently announcing that they're cutting off their rights offer. Why? Because last year they needed it to just basically survive, but now because the oil price has recovered, it's disappeared as an issue. When it comes to these mining companies, very rarely do you find that there's significant inefficiencies in the companies. Most often it's a case of they didn't plan the price of the commodity properly, and therefore when the price fell, they were left with certain unprofitable segments. But if the price of the commodity goes up, those unprofitable segments become profitable again. So it's all a case of, predicting the commodity price as opposed to look at inefficiency.
Speaking of those commodities, there's platinum going slightly down, around 0.5% in this afternoon's trade. It was headed towards 1,300 at some stage, and it looked like it was just going to keep going. What's happening with the demand picture there? Is it because the rest of the globe is perhaps still not on board in terms of demand, creating the kind of vehicles we need? We're now looking towards more of the electrical vehicles. I mean, the likes of Apple even looking to go that route as well.
Yeah, look, I mean, the most powerful, or the most valuable car company in the world by far is Tesla, which does basically electrical vehicles. And of course, platinum, for those that don't know, is involved in catalytic converters, which basically makes the exhaust from your car less, polluting. And platinum, specifically among the platinum group metals, is more suited towards things like diesel vehicles, where you can use, for instance, palladium in things like petrol vehicles. Diesel vehicles have had a very bad period for the last couple of years. For instance, the VW situation was a bad issue with them, where VW lied about emissions, and also diesel vehicles are much more popular in Europe than the other parts of the world. So in Europe had a bit of a weakness that's also affecting platinum as well. So if we can see a return to automobile demand, we might see platinum recover a little bit from here.
Certainly very interesting. And that gold price, do we get back to 2,000 anytime soon, or is that a far-fetch now?
Look, I mean, it could happen. The thing with gold is, unlike platinum, there's very few fundamentals around it. There's what's called a hate trade or fear trade and a love trade. The love trade is about basically people like in India and China buying gold for jewelry, and other parts of the world as well, but primarily India and China. The fear trade is people primarily in the West buying gold as a safe haven. If there's uncertainty, if there's another resurgence, very easily, if we see a bit of fear in the world, we could easily see gold prices rise again. Look at Bitcoin. Bitcoin, to a certain extent, is what's acting as a substitute for gold right now, as a safe haven in uncertainty.
Sure. Very interesting. Viv, appreciate the time. Always good chatting to you. Thank you so much for the time there. Viv Govender then from Ranswers helping us unpack this market picture and this afternoon trade then. As you can see, things are a little bit flat for the most part there. The local exchange is down just over 0.1% or just around 0.1% then as well at this time. We're going to come back though and give you a little bit more news. Stay tuned. You're on point.